we followed the Beatles. The Beatles had just finished Sgt. Pepper. Mostly they recorded in Studio 2, but they did record in Studio 3 too. And so we went into the studio. We spotted that they'd been using a Mellotron.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yes. We spotted they've been using a Mellotron, and Mellotron is all over this album, Odyssey and Oracle, and of course it wouldn't have been if the Beatles hadn't left it behind.
Well, Colin, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, Kirsty.
Good.
You.
It's a very exciting day, isn't it, for you? Because it is the re-release today of your iconic Odyssey and Oracle album, newly remastered. How exciting is that for you?
I think it's really exciting in many ways. This is the first time that people will hear it in the original mono. It was actually recorded in mono at a time when stereo was just becoming important, and we'd already spent our recording budget, a very meagre recording budget, and we were then asked to go back into the studio and remix it in stereo. And I think that the stereo mix, because there were financial restrictions, it has its limitations. So it's quite nice to go back to that, the mono mix, which is how we heard it in Studio 3 in Abbey Road when we were recording it in 1967.
67, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Is it true that it was rushed through, or you rushed it a bit? I read somewhere.
Well, we had to, because we were given £1,000, and even then, Abbey Road was probably the most expensive studio in the world. So what we did, we rehearsed extensively in a little village hall somewhere out in Hertfordshire, and when we got into the studio, we knew what songs we were going to do. We knew what keys they're in. We knew the arrangement. We're just looking for a performance, and we really had to record very fast.
And as you said, 1967, Abbey Road. What was it like to record there?
Well, it was iconic then, and it's iconic now. And in fact, we followed the Beatles. The Beatles had just finished Sgt. Pepper. Mostly they recorded in Studio 2, but they did record in Studio 3 too. And so we went into the studio. We spotted that they'd been using a Mellotron.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yes. We spotted they've been using a Mellotron, and Mellotron is all over this album, Odyssey and Oracle, and of course it wouldn't have been if the Beatles hadn't left it behind. But equally, we were picking up the percussion instruments up off the floor. We were fans. I mean, people probably don't think that a band would be a fan of another band, but we were huge Beatles fans. So it was just a brilliant, it was a thrill, to be there at that time.
Did you ever see John after that and say, I used your Mellotron?
No. I remember that I went to one of their Christmas shows. They used to have these wonderful Christmas shows, and I watched from the wings. And this is my claim to fame. Wow. The Beatles walked past. It was absolutely pitch black dark in the wings, but they walked past me and probably 100 other people, and George Harrison said, all right.
I love
That's
it.
my claim for fame.
And you said you loved the Beatles. What was it about the Beatles? I mean, we obviously play them all the time on Gold Radio. Our listeners absolutely love them. They're huge. I mean, they've been so influential. Why do you think that is, Colin?
Well, they changed everything. I think, one of the main things is that they realised, and everyone else followed from them, that you could write your own material. That seems such a strange thing to say now, but before them, typically a band would go to songwriters to get their songs. And of course, the Beatles were the most wonderful songwriters ever. And everybody realised that. The other thing was, with the huge success they had, particularly in America, it opened the doors for British bands travelling worldwide, and again, particularly in America. And when we go to America, they would call us part of the first wave of the British invasion. It gets quite sort of precise, exactly your place in the order of things.
Really?
So we were part of the first wave of the British invasion. And it was wonderful. Cool. It was absolutely wonderful. And I've often thought that in the first few years, I needn't have sung at all because the screaming was so loud. Really, I could have just done nothing and it would have had the same effect.
What a time to be performing. What a time for you guys. And so obviously the Beatles influenced you, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course they did. But we never tried to copy anyone. We really didn't. And Jeff Emmerich, who'd been recording, he's the real ace engineer from Abbey Road. He'd recorded a lot of the Beatles recordings. He wrote a wonderful book. And one of the things he said is the one band that came into Abbey Road who didn't ask, can we sound like the Beatles, was the Zombies. And we've never tried to sound like anybody else. We never followed trends. We always wrote to the best of our ability and recorded to the best of our ability, and that was the formula.
Tell us about the name.
The Zombies.
Yes, just love it. Tell us about that,
I always
Colin.
think it
Where
came-
did it come from?
I always think it came out of desperation, actually, because every band, it sounds so trivial, but a band needs a name. And so we were desperately trying to think of a name. And we were, for about a week, we were the Mustangs. And then we realized there were hundreds of Mustangs. And then, to my eternal shame, I came up with the name The Sundowners, because there was a film, Robert Mitchum, film called The Sundowners. And I knew that The Searchers had taken the name from a John Wayne film. And I thought, Sundown, terrible. That only lasted about a week. I tried to forget that that was my suggestion. And then one guy just suddenly said, The Zombies. And it just stuck.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've got to be honest, certainly then, I had no idea what a zombie was. And if I might give away a little secret, I don't really know what a zombie is now. But the name stuck. It's very memorable. And so the Zombies it was.
I think the Zombies are one of my teenage sons. But anyway, who knows? Who knows? No, sorry, boys. It's a great name. It's stuck. It's brilliant. It's memorable. Back to the album, though. Let's talk more about Odyssey and Oracle. Critically acclaimed still. I mean, I can't believe it's nearly 60 years on. Why do you think that is, Colin?
It's really, there is a slight mystery about this album because to a large extent it was ignored when it was released. Kenny Everett was a huge fan of this album and one or two other people, but the media in general ignored this album. It nearly wasn't released in the UK and it certainly was nearly not released in America. But Al Cooper, who'd started Blood, Sweat and Tears, had become a producer at CBS. He walked, on his first day in work, he walked into Clive Davis, who's Mr. Big at CBS, and he said, I've got 80 records here that I've just brought back from London, not available in the UK, and this one album stands out. We have to get this album whatever it costs. And Clive Davis said, CBS own this album, we weren't even going to release it.
Wow.
So Al Cooper really fought for this album, otherwise it would never have been released. It really happened the hard way. And even after a huge hit single, Time of the Season from this album was a #1 in America, the album still wasn't that successful. But gradually over a period of years, in America, I think Tom Petty was the main person who was talking about this album. And in this country, the wonderful Paul Weller was
he's
always
a huge fan.
talking about this album, and will sometimes say this is his favourite album of all time. And eventually it starts to catch on.
Yeah.
But it took years and years, and I often think, I'm going to be recording a solo album next year. Please don't wait 60 years to recognise it. It's a bit late in the day for me now.
It's interesting because did you guys not break up before the release of the album? What happened there?
Well, I think that it was a time when singles were still all important.
Yeah.
And we released one single, and I think we were kind of getting a bit drained by everything. We perceived ourselves as being very unsuccessful. It was only afterwards, there's no internet, so you don't know what's happening around the world. And it was only afterwards we realised we always had a hit somewhere. If we'd known that, maybe the band would have kept going. But we released a single in this country. I think it's a really commercial song, Care of Cell 44, and it wasn't a success. And we had that terrible sort of meeting, well, come on, guys, maybe it's time. But we all went on and did new projects.
Yeah.
And I personally didn't have a plan B, so it's very difficult for me. I didn't know what I was going to do. But you're quite right. We actually finished the band before Odyssey and Oracle came out.
And we were talking about Time in the Season. I mean, it was a massive breakout hit. But was it true that there were sort of fake bands
There were.
touring, trying to capitalise? Just
Absolutely.
tell us about that. Because I was trying to think how I would feel about that. I mean, obviously, it's a compliment. But then you're like, well, hang on a minute. We're not really reaping the rewards here.
I know. I kind of thought of it as a compliment. And also, I'm very aware that I want musicians to be in work. And so many musicians can't get a gig. And I was sort of saying, I'll let them get on with it. And famously, 2 of ZZ Top were in one of those bands. And Chris White was in he's a bass player from the Zombies. He was in Rolling Stone's offices in New York, and they got him to phone up the manager of one of the bands, who explained on the phone, he didn't know Chris White was in the Zombies, he thought it was a Rolling Stone journalist. And he explained to Chris White that they were relaunching the Zombies, so to speak, in honour of the name of the lead singer who'd tragically been killed in a car crash. Now, as the lead singer of the Zombies, who'd been tragically killed in a car crash, it gave me a very strange feeling. But that was his justification for forming a Zombies band to honour my name.
My goodness.
So I was only about 21. It was it was a little bit previous to announce my death, I
I
think.
mean, that's terrible.
Yeah,
So some strange things going on.
absolutely.
Time in the season. Tell us the story behind it, because it wasn't a hit in the UK, was it?
No, I think it's been issued 4 or 5 times.
Why is that? Because is that strange for you, or is
It is a little bit strange because it's been a huge hit
Yeah.
all around the world. And also, it's one of those songs that's always turning up in films and commercials. It's an absolute goldmine. But people in England probably are not as familiar as people in every other country in the world. It was the last song that was written for the album. It was the last song that was recorded for the album. And famously, Rod and I had a real heated moment when because as I said, we were running out of money. And I could see there was a big clock in front of him, and I could see we were going to run out of money if we didn't get this vocal down. And Rod, quite rightly, was trying to coach me through the vocal. It had only just been written. I didn't really know it. And we were really going at it over the headphones and forgetting that the whole control room was full of Abbey Road people and the language was awful. And it always makes me laugh because this terrible language is going backwards and forwards while I'm singing, "It's the time of the season for loving." And then the language started again. And somehow we managed to get this performance together.
it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, that must have been quite off-putting.
What, the language?
Well, yeah, that while you're trying to, get into romantic mode, Colin.
Yes, I suppose it was. But I mean, you have to learn to get over these things.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always wondered what it would be like to record where you really, you got to put a good performance on, especially somewhere like Abbey Road.
I know. I've got to be honest. This might
Is it
sound...
nerve-wracking?
It can get a bit nerve-wracking, especially if there's a lot of people watching you through that glass screen. And especially if you know the money's running out in the recording process, And it really does.
Your meter,
Yeah,
time's
the meter's
going.
running.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can get a bit bad. And I always try to sort of get into the lyric. It can get a little bit weird. You're trying to get into the mood. At the same time, you're very conscious. You've only got so many takes to do this.
Easy.
Yeah, it's not really.
Not easy at all. You mentioned Paul Weller, big artists who've spoken about their love of you guys. I mean, Post Malone, Harry Styles.
Absolutely.
How does that make you feel?
Well, it's incredible. Of course, it's really uplifting and encouraging,
Wonderful.
Energizing, exciting. Then at the end of it, I just think isn't it ironic that this album came out and was virtually ignored, and now these wonderful, wonderful artists are extolling its virtues. And how can there's a mystery in that. I don't understand how that happened, but of course I'm eternally grateful that they do love the album, and it means so much because it validates what we were doing. You can look back and say, we weren't so far off. Okay, it wasn't acknowledged at the time, but we're getting this wonderful acknowledgement now. So in short, it's absolutely brilliant that artists of that caliber will say that this is a favourite album.
It's brilliant, and I think that's why people love listening to the music we play on Gold Radio. Music like the Zombies, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. They influence so many bands and artists these days. I mean, it's proper music. It's culture. It's the beginnings of whatever, rock and roll, soul, funk, pop, whatever. No matter what it is, that is proper music. Do you agree?
Absolutely, I do. And you'll find that a lot of young bands, and especially in America, are incredibly influenced by bands of that era. We were always amazed, the cross-section of ages in the audience that came to see concerts of the Zombies. And I know that journalists would come along and they expect everyone to be 50, 60 and heaven knows what. But it was split. We would have teenagers in our audience and we would have 20-year-olds, and we could always spot the bands because they would be up the front and you could see they were bands, and they were watching what we were doing. And it's incredibly energizing to know that people are still influenced by the Zombies.
Of course they are. And Brian Wilson, who we sadly lost recently, we obviously play a lot of the Beach Boys. You toured with him, didn't you, back in 2010?
No, it's much later than that. It was 2019. I think it was just before COVID.
Wow, how was that?
It was... he has the most superb band, and of course he's one of the all-time greats. The songs they were playing, if you could hear them warm up before they went on stage. I mean, they would do it in the green room, not in the dressing room, and they used to do it in my room. The harmonies are just superb. But my moment of of triumph, I was invited to sing with the band, and I sang God Only Knows at the Greek Theatre. It was a sold-out 7,500 people, and I was going to stand right next to Brian Wilson. He played the piano while I sang God Only Knows. I don't know, I can't express exactly how you feel when you do that, but just to enhance this story, I walked rather cagily towards the mic stand to address 7,500 people with Brian Wilson sitting right behind me. I noticed as I got there, there was no mic on the mic stand.
Oh, no.
And so I'm not quite sure what I did beside inwardly panic and wish that I wasn't there. Luckily, it felt like 2 or 3 minutes before anybody got the mic into the mic
thank
stand.
goodness.
It was probably a few seconds. And thank heavens they didn't start that iconic intro to God Only Knows. Because I don't know what I would have done.
Running around.
I don't know. But they got the mic there just in time. And I had the honour of singing God Only Knows with that wonderful band and Brian Wilson playing the piano literally right next to me.
And brilliant songwriting, as you said. Great harmonies.
Oh, my
they had it
goodness. They had it all. Just wonderful, wonderful.
And what about you? Have you got a busy sort of promotional schedule now with the re-release of the album?
I
What's
have.
happening?
It's merged from the documentary. I've been to the
Tell us
States.
about that.
Yeah, I've been to the States 4 times this year. And they've done a wonderful. A Hollywood director has made an hour-and-a-half documentary. Tom Hanks is one of the producers. And it just tells the story of the zombies. They found clips of film I had no idea existed, that from right back when we were children to when the band first started, really embarrassing clips of when we were about 15 or 16, and then onwards up until it kind of leads towards the induction in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And for us, it's a very emotional experience, but I think it does work as a documentary, and it's been getting wonderful reviews. And there's talk of it maybe getting a Grammy, but we'll just have to see what happens.
How exciting.
Yeah, I'll just keep my fingers crossed.
Yes,
I'm not
we
sure if
all
I'm
will.
supposed to say things like that.
No, it's really lovely. It's very humbling. No, it is. And did you meet Tom Hanks?
No, I didn't actually.
You see, maybe you will.
Hopefully so,
you
yeah.
get that nomination. No, absolutely. And you mentioned a solo album.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, it's right at the very, very beginning. I would hope it will be released. I'm sure it will be released next year. I'm doing a solo tour the whole of May. In the UK. I'm not sure if the solo album will be ready for that. But in the meantime, I've got a live album. My first album was called 1 Year, my first solo album. Say You Don't Mind was the hit from it, the Denny Lane song. And for the first time, we recorded that live at the Union Chapel last November, and that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time. So that's very exciting as well. And that certainly will be available on the tour in May. So there's an awful lot happening. I don't really understand how this can be.
I do. It's brilliant. You're absolutely
Well, it's very
brilliant.
kind of
I
you
don't
to
know how
say
you got
that.
the energy, because it's exhausting listening to... Do you ever say no to things? I guess...
Well,
while you're being asked, you might say yes.
I mean, there is an element of that, isn't there? You know, obviously this is not going to go on forever. And so I'm a bit prone to saying yes, I've got to be honest. I mean, once or twice I might say, I can't,
Really?
I can't do that. But it's very, very rare. I mean, I think that, writing, recording, performing and promoting, it's all part of the job, if you like to think of it like that. And I thoroughly enjoy it. What did someone say? If you like what you're doing, you never do a day's work in your life.
Well,
and
it's
that's
true.
how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's like me here talking to you.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute joy. Colin, good luck with the re-release of the album.
Thank you so
We
much.
will continue playing the Zombies every single day. They're in my show today. I'm very excited, but it's been a real joy to speak to you. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything.
Kirsty. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
Gold Radio.